Thanks to Bombas for sponsoring this video. For 2 days, they waited outside the burning lighthouse. It was 1961, and there had just been an explosion on Lake Superior. One so powerful, it sent flames flying up the side of the building, blew a refrigerator out the window, and left one person dead. And in the chaos, the lifeboat had drifted away. Now, the 3 survivors were stranded in the middle of one of the largest lakes in the world. And nobody else knew what had happened, because these men lived and worked at what's been called the loneliest place on Earth. And recently, I got to pay it a visit. It's story time. Before I get too far into the story, thanks to Bombas for sponsoring this video. I walk around some weird places for this series, so I'm fairly particular about having comfortable, durable socks in my hiking boots. I tried socks from Bombas about 5 years ago, and since then, they have become my go-to for hiking, running, skiing, and just general existence. They're really good quality, and for every pair purchased, Bombas donates a pair to someone experiencing homelessness. So far, they've donated more than 150 million essential clothing items, and their stuff also makes a really good gift. Also, I did just learn that they make slippers, and as somebody who lives in the north, I will be wearing these until the snow melts. In about 5 months. Bombas makes stuff that feels good, and you can know your purchase does some good in the world too. If you want to check them out, you can get 20% off your first purchase using the code Alexis20. The link to their website is in the description, or if you're watching on your TV, you can use your phone's camera to scan this QR code, and it'll take you right there. As always, thanks for considering supporting the sponsors who support this series. And now, on with the story. More officially, this is Stannard Rock Lighthouse. It's about 25 miles from the nearest land, making it farther offshore than any other lighthouse in North America. And once you get out there, it's pretty clear why it exists. We sailed out of Big Bay, and we watched Lake Superior get deeper than 500 feet. But around the lighthouse, it's only about 10 feet to the bottom. There's a very shallow reef here, made of the billion-year-old volcanic rock you can find all over this area. And in the 1800s, these waters were full of ships moving lumber and ore from one port to another. In fact, mariners called this one of the most treacherous reefs in the entire Great Lakes. So clearly, it needed a marker. To start, a day beacon was installed in 1867. A day beacon is a navigation beacon with no light on it that's designed to be used during the day. But of course, traffic didn't stop when the sun went down. So what this reef really needed was a lighthouse. Except, here's the thing. This isn't an island. This reef is underwater. And this was the mid-1800s. So how did people 150 years ago build a lighthouse almost 30 miles offshore without a bit of dry land to stand on? Well, after funding was secured from Congress, the first step was building a camp. The team got some land nearby and filled it with living quarters, workshops, docks, and more. They also brought in equipment from another lighthouse that had been built on a reef in Lake Huron. So they weren't totally starting from scratch. Once camp was set up, the next step was building a protective crib, basically a temporary wooden fence. To start, they built the crib's basic shape. Then they shipped it to the reef and took measurements to make sure it would fit snugly on the rock. Then they dragged that frame back to shore, built it to its final height, hauled the whole thing back to the reef, and at last anchored it to the rock in 1878. The steps are simple, but even getting out there was no small task. The boats left the work camp at 4:30 in the morning on August 4th and arrived at 11 a.m. the next day. Meanwhile, I got to sip coffee and enjoy the sunrise on my cushy 90-minute ride in a powerboat. The dream, basically. After the crib was installed, the team spent the rest of the season filling it with stone and concrete, as well as assembling the permanent iron frame that would contain the pier. The reports I read didn't say if they pumped out the water from this area to make building easier, but I kind of have to assume they did. By 1880, the permanent pier stood 14 feet above the lake, and the limestone to build the lighthouse itself was beginning to arrive at camp. That stone probably came from somewhere else in the Great Lakes region, meaning that this lighthouse, built on billion-year-old volcanic rock, is made of stone that formed from a warm, shallow sea some 500 million years later. Geology is cool. Rocks tell stories. As the 1880s got started, the stone was cut, work quarters were built on the crib, and the tower steadily rose into existence. Each massive stone was raised up over and over again until the tower was 100 feet tall. Then, when workers came back the following spring, they had to spend a whole week clearing ice off the first 18 feet of the tower, because Lake Superior does not care about your navigation projects. The lighthouse was ultimately completed by the end of 1883 for a final budget of around $330,000, or around 10.7 million today. And for a light, they used a second-order Fresnel lens that could blast light for 18 miles. The records I had of exactly how they built the Stannard Rock light station were a little sparse, but it's clear that this was a 19th century feat of engineering. To build this lighthouse, the teams had to battle the wind, the waves, and they had to lift a lot of incredibly heavy stone. But what might be even more incredible is that once this structure was finished, people lived here. This is like all the land you get in the world is this little ring.
Yeah, somebody was recently asking me about, is this like truly like the loneliest place on Earth to be at? You know, I was thinking, maybe there's some spots in the mountains that would be like lonely and remote too, but at least there you can get out and go for a hike. Like here you can, do laps around this circular pier, and that's about it. So I think we'll head into the lighthouse now.
The lighthouse has 6 floors, plus the basement and the lantern room. And I'll show you what's on each of them. But for now, I want to highlight the 3rd floor because it made me realize just how small this place is. Yeah, because it's like the walls here. You have what? Like not even 5 steps across? And then you would have also needed room for the other guys to like come around the stairs here. So you get what? You get like a bed, a little shelf or like a dresser or something maybe. This place is so small.
Yeah, so this is probably one of our better looking rooms, just in the sense that it like still has like some nice colorful paint, and like the original wood floor looks decent, it's in decent shape. Mm-hmm. So I think if I was going to spend the night here, like this would probably be high on the list for the room that I would spend the night in. Obviously,
the lighthouse was in better shape 100 years ago, but it wasn't bigger. Typically, 4 men from the Coast Guard were stationed here, and this 60-foot circle of concrete was their entire world. They played a lot of cards, ate a lot of canned food, and sometimes went days without talking because they'd run out of things to say. And this was as hard as you'd imagine. There are stories about men who refuse to come back after a break on land, running away without permission or accepting a court-martial. There's even one story about a man who called the Coast Guard, threatening to start swimming if they didn't immediately send him a boat. Now, the Coast Guard wasn't deaf to these struggles. They did rotate men on and off the station, giving them 1 week on land for every 3 weeks at the lighthouse. But that's still 3 weeks with nothing but this circle of concrete, a few small rooms, and an endless amount of water. Today, people fish near Stannard Rock, so when I was there, you could still see people pretty nearby. I can't imagine what it was like to go weeks just staring at the waves.
So do you guys want to go down in the lower levels first or go up top first?
Ooh, down first?
We can go down first, yeah.
Down we go.
So this level you can see was once the shower room.
Okay, yeah. Ooh, some nice little dill pickle sunflower seeds.
I have no idea what's happening here. You see so we have different partners that use this place, including, you know, the Coast Guard and other weather station maintainers. I don't know what that is.
Do you leave anything in the bird drawing?
Okay, here's where you have to watch your step.
Okay, do not fall into the hole. Got it.
Do not fall in the hole. Yeah, it's very tunnely. It almost seems like there's remnants of coal in some of the tunnels.
Okay.
So maybe they use those to power, you know, early steam generators, or, you know, there's steam whistles and things like that. I think this was a generator room a long time ago. But yeah, we can check out the tunnels a little bit.
That's cool. Little calcite drips or whatever that is. Oh, this is low.
So down here, there's two of these rooms, and I think that there were, you know, hatch covers on top of this a long time ago. So they must have, you know, maybe this is where they dumped, you know, coal or something like that.
Yeah.
Seemed like this was like a holding room for something. And that brings us back to where we were. So one thing I have to do is part of my job is come out here at least once a year and just do a general inspection of the place. And over the years, you know, windows like this one over here have been broken. I'm not sure why they break, but they do. So I had to come out here with plexiglass and cut it to fit and then stick it in place with some glue. There are some interesting things in this lighthouse that, like, I want to learn more about what they are. It's like,
Whoa.
it's like, what is this thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
What was it used for?
Huh. It's a weird little spot to have a side table.
I mean, I do have a theory what it might have been used for, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I have none, so what is your guess?
This room is a lot taller than the other ones, and it has this central pole.
Okay.
And it has these old pulleys. There's one down here, and there's one up there, and then it runs into the wall to another pulley, which then runs through a hole in the wall and then comes down, and for some reason that board is there. I'm not
Yeah.
sure why the board is there, but I do know with the early lighthouses that in order to make the lens move in a circle, that they used to crank up a heavy weight, and then as the weight would lower, it would rotate the lens up top. So I'm thinking that this pulley system may have been part of that. That's my theory. I'm not sure if it's true or not.
I mean, it makes sense to me.
It's like it goes all the way down to the bottom of the lighthouse.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I'm really curious what that was for.
If that is what holds the weight, this seems like it might be the highest it could get. You know, it starts going through pulleys there.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that, if you can crank it up and put that board in, and then it doesn't start until you pull the board out. Otherwise, as soon as you crank it up, then it starts spinning. But if you don't want the light on at that point,
There it is. Yeah. So it's like the start mechanism. Huh?
yeah,
So it, yeah.
crank it up whenever it's convenient for you, and then have that banked for whenever you want to start the light.
Yeah. It could be it.
Now, I didn't just go to Stannard Rock to get a tour. I was also there because of the future of the lighthouse. In 2015, the federal government transferred ownership of the site to the Superior Watershed Partnership, a nonprofit in Michigan's Upper Peninsula working on projects that serve the environment. And the SWP didn't just acquire this place for its historical significance. It's also an international climate research station used by the US and Canada.
Yeah. There's several towers up the top that have anemometers for measuring the wind speeds and different devices for measuring the temperature and lake evaporation and all kinds of stuff. There's There's one on this side and one on the other side, and these are the NOAA webcams.
Oh, okay.
So every hour, I think this camera takes like 6 photos at different angles. It'll send it to the web every hour, so anybody can check on that if they're curious what it looks like out here.
Neat.
I did have a webcam several years ago, but eventually died. There were a few times where water sprayed up in front of the camera, and the camera was mounted, actually it was on this level, I think. So you could see from the waves this high, and the camera shook when the wave hit the tower. You know, the rooms, they're showing their age. It'd be nice to refurbish them so that, you know, people could come stay here. Particularly, we're thinking like climate scientists, you know, people who study the weather, because we partner with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and Environment Canada, and the Great Lakes Evaporation Network, and all kinds of partners like that. And this place is a really important for weather study because we're not influenced by any human influences really out here. I mean, we're like 26 miles from the nearest land, and, you know, many miles from like the nearest city. So nice clean air and good weather data. In general, the place like structurally is decent, but you can see there's some pretty big cracks in the foundation. I mean, kind of like all over the place.
Right.
So, you know, that's something that we would definitely have to address in the future to make sure that this can stay out here for like another 100 years.
Right now, the SWP is raising money to restore the lighthouse, and they're offering the top 5 donors an all expenses paid visit. And if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can find their GoFundMe link in the description. For more than 70 years, men lived here at Stannard Rock, keeping ships safe. That ended in 1961 with the explosion. Nobody knows for sure what caused it, but afterward, an automatic light replaced the keepers. And for another 50 years, its only real visitors were the Coast Guard. But now, this place is used for international climate and weather research. The lighthouse is still an active aid to navigation, but it's also a place researchers can collect data about wind, waves, evaporation, and more, even in the winter, when most data collecting buoys are pulled out of the water. That data then helps ships, the public, and the larger scientific community. Instead of just helping us navigate, it's helping us better understand the world we live in. When I started this video, I thought Stannard Rock would be interesting because it's the farthest offshore lighthouse on the continent. But what I didn't realize is that some of its most important work might still be ahead.